All right, guys, we're here in a vehicle I've been waiting to get my hands on for quite a while. This is a 2020 Ford Expedition, and interestingly enough, this is one of the few Fords that I hadn't driven, at least in its current generation. And let me say, right off the bat, this thing was worth the wait. I really have nothing bad to say about this car. It's great. Everything works as it should. It is everything that I personally would want in an SUV. The Expedition is the only Ford SUV, at least until Bronco debuts, that is still on a full ladder frame. The difference being with Expedition, you get independent rear suspension, and it's had that through the previous generation as well. This thing handles amazingly for a vehicle its size. This is just the standard Expedition, not the Expedition EL or the long wheelbase version, and it actually winds up being a bit shorter than a super cab short bed or crew cab short bed F-150, and there is a marked difference in the maneuverability of this thing. Now, this particular truck is a two-wheel drive, and I was actually surprised that Ford gave me that. Usually with these kind of press vehicles, they give you a pretty loaded up version, and this one's a King Ranch and does have a sticker price of like $75,000, so it's pretty well loaded, but it's still a two-wheel drive. And one thing that really stood out to myself and anyone who's driven this particular truck is it has ridiculous turn-in. I mean, the turning circle on it is so small. It could be that it's just this particular one, and it's due to it having, not having CV shafts for the front axle, which would reduce your turn-in. I'm getting past here because I'm driving too slow and talking too much. But would reduce your turning radius. Reduce your turning arc of your wheels, and therefore increase your turning radius. But since it doesn't have all that extra equipment in the front axle, you can get more turn in because you're not limited by your CV joints on your front half shafts. This thing will outturn a Mustang Performance Pack Level 2 with the big wide tires that have sort of a limited bump stops on the or the limited steering stops on the front end. If you're afraid of getting a large SUV like this and getting stuck in tight parking spots or something, don't be. This thing moves around like something much smaller than it, and I'll actually show you right here what I'm talking about. Hop over here in the church parking lot and watch this thing go lock to lock right here in a circle. Got the landscaping guy here. Watch this. It's freaking nuts how tightly this thing turns. I mean, that is insanity for a vehicle this size. So if you're worried about having trouble getting this thing in and out of parking spaces, maybe your wife's intimidated by a large SUV, don't be. This one, at least in two-wheel drive form, very impressive. As far as handling and ride, it handles very sophisticated truck-like, I would put. I actually like the way this thing handles and rides better than an F-150. I feel like Ford, especially on the high trim level, Platinums, limited F-150s, they give them way too soft a rear suspension, and you got all that unsprung weight of a live axle on those leaf springs, and it kind of just leaves you with like a mushy feeling. This is compliant yet firm. You can tell it has coil springs and active shocks, things like that. They're really working to smooth out any imperfections in the road, but not make them so dull and mushy that you forget that you're in a truck-based vehicle. It handles like I feel like a truck should, and I'm a truck guy. I love old school truck feel, and this thing is super tight, super well bolted together. It's really, really good. Hopefully I can get a video for you guys a little bit later, crawling underneath and showing you all those features underneath it rather than just talking about it. But you really need to drive one of these things to experience it. It's so much better than the previous generation, which was still good. You have a fully aluminum body now, which cut weight tremendously on this generation versus the previous steel body trucks. And you got the 3.5 liter EcoBoost making 375 horsepower, 470 pound-feet of torque, feeding through a 10R80 transmission. And that combination, for one thing, this thing will roast the tires off the vehicle. If you turn the traction control off, you can do a very nice burnout. It has 470 pound-feet of torque. It'll turn the tires. And as far as mileage goes, I've been really pleasantly surprised. I took this thing on about a 1,000-mile road trip over the Christmas holiday, and got over 20 miles per gallon the entire trip, which was super impressive. Actually saw over 22 in certain parts through Virginia where it's a little bit flatter, and so way better mileage than the previous V8 model Expeditions, and way more power too. It does still have some of that weird 10R80 shifting where you occasionally get some clunks and some weird downshifts at part throttle, but Ford will take care of that sooner or later through an update in the tune. And also, you can always tune this thing, and honestly, if I owned this truck, I would have a tune on it, because the 3.5 liter EcoBoost really wakes up with a tune. Super impressive power. And like I said, the ride and handling, it's the best Ford SUV I've driven. Now, that being said, to me, if I were buying a Ford SUV, it would be down between an Expedition and the Explorer ST right now. I really love the Explorer ST. That thing was a ton of fun, made great power, and has great modability, you know, intake, tune, exhaust, and you can make a lot of power on that, especially if you really want to get serious, start upgrading the turbos and things like that. You can lay down some serious numbers with an Explorer ST. That being said, you know, I have a Lightning, I have a Cobra, I have quite a few other performance vehicles. I don't necessarily need a performance SUV, and with the Expedition, this thing performs well enough, especially if you tuned it, that I would get all the straight line performance I was looking for. It handles really well, and it's bigger, and it's on a full frame. I can tow more with it. This would probably be the way I would lean if I was looking for a new vehicle, a new SUV. Size-wise, it's larger than an Explorer, but not tremendously larger. So you're not talking about a huge step up in size, but you are getting a huge step up in capability. Now, if you go to the extended wheelbase Expedition, you're obviously going to get a much longer vehicle and everything. Typically, the way I run and the way I have this one set up right now, I have the third row folded down, that way I get more cargo capacity, and then you still have your second row seats. If I were ordering one of these things for myself, I would probably get the bench seat in the second row, just so I would have a little bit more people carrying capacity in that second row while still leaving the third row folded down. So that's just kind of the way I look at it. You know, everybody has their own preferences on that kind of stuff, but this thing, very, very nice. I have it in sport mode. It has a couple different modes, you know, eco mode, which I did not use, and standard drive mode. I like putting it in sport mode straight off, just because I'm pretty sure it pumps more fake engine noise into the cab, which is a good thing, whether you like it or not. I mean, if you compare what these V6 EcoBoost engines actually sound like versus, you know, what Ford gives you through the stereo, it's an upgrade. But it also, another big thing is it turns off the automatic start-stop, which I really hate. That's, to me, is a dumb thing to add to a vehicle to get an exceptionally small increase in fuel savings. But it automatically turns that off if you're in sport mode, and then it firms everything up and crisps up the throttle and the shifting, and basically makes it drive like how you'd want it to. Everything else is a little too squishy for my taste, but at least they give you that. I did get a chance to run it in wet and snow mode quite a bit. Like I said, took it on a trip over the Christmas holiday, and we ran into that nice little snowstorm that hit North Carolina, Virginia, and Ohio, West Virginia, and everything, and got to run it on some ice-covered roads. And even though it was a two-wheel drive, this thing did really, really well. The snow mode basically amps up the traction control to 11. It makes the ABS a little bit more aggressive, and basically does not allow you to input enough throttle to make it spin or go out of control. And it worked. I tried it with and without, you know, you could get this thing sideways in a hurry, especially if you were trying like I was. But with it on, it nannies the thing up and makes it to the point where it would be difficult to get it out of hand in just normal snow-covered road driving. So even though it was a two-wheel drive, I was impressed by its capability, you know, in adverse conditions. Especially living where I am in South Carolina, if the difference between having two-wheel drive and four-wheel drive meant giving up the insane turning radius that this thing has, I would absolutely get the two-wheel drive. I don't use four-wheel drive enough for a vehicle like this to make it worth it. Now, in a Super Duty, I'd go ahead and get the four-wheel drive, because what I'm using that for is towing things and working hard, a lot of times off-road. I would want four-wheel drive just because there's been many a time where I've drug a trailer through a sand-covered field, and you know, if I didn't have four-wheel drive, you know, I might not have made it. This truck, it's going to be an on-road vehicle, and you're not going to do any serious off-roading with it. So I would go ahead and get the two-wheel drive version. It gets a little bit better fuel economy than the four-wheel drive version, and if you get this insane turning radius with two-wheel drive but lose it with four-wheel drive, that's a no-brainer to me. I would absolutely skip the four-wheel drive option. But if you live in a northern climate and need it, if it does that well in two-wheel drive, in four-wheel drive, this thing should be rock solid off-road. The only thing I can say is, if Ford really wanted to make a four-wheel drive version of this thing even more impressive, they should give it the trimmer treatment like they've done the F-150 and the Ranger, and of course the Super Duty, which we'll be testing a little bit later on. So definitely subscribe to the YouTube channel if you want to see that. We've got a F-250 loaded up trimmer with the 7.3 liter Godzilla engine in it, and I've been waiting to get my hands on one of those for a long-term test, and that's exactly what we'll be doing. But as for this one, our White King Ranch, man, it drives fantastically. It handles great, rides good, it's super comfortable. You can fit full-size adults in even the third row, not to mention the second row, super comfortable with its heated seats and all that infotainment center and everything. This thing definitely gets my buy recommendation. I'm not sure I would get the King Ranch interior. I would probably just go for the basic XLT with they have a sport seat, sport material on the seats. I would probably go for that version. But yeah, this thing is good, and like I said, I have no real complaints on it. It does have some weird features as far as like this little coin slot thing. I don't know what that's for, and weird cubby holes. I'm sure this is blanks where you would have your four-wheel drive controls and probably like a trailer brake controller, which would be nice to have on this, by the way. That's one feature on this particular truck I would like to have, is a trailer brake controller, because it's so capable. You are obviously going to want to hook up to a trailer that has trailer brakes. So that's probably just a feature that they skipped when they built this one, but if I was ordering it, trailer brake controller would be in it. But I mean, I don't know what you put in some of these spots, but oh well. This thing is really good, guys. We have a lot of coverage on this. I've created a whole playlist for just this particular expedition. We've got a full article up on svtperformance.com, so head over there, check it out. I think you guys will really like what you got to see. Check out the rest of the videos. Please subscribe to the channel and head over to svtperformance.com, where we have all the latest news, reviews, and information on your favorite Ford performance vehicles. Look at this turning radius. Look at this. It's ridiculous. We need to get Vaughn Gittin Jr. in one of these drifting, because you could obviously do it. I don't know if you can see this, but this is how you confuse your nav system.